Greetings, dear friends. We are in the Marian month of May of 2024, the month where May crownings all over, wherever there is a memory of whatever degree of Our Lady, May crownings happen. But who crowns any other person than a queen? Now, the queen we crown is not Miss Universe or Miss World or Miss America or Queen of the Prom, who are all winners of awards or rewards for their accomplishments, or even like the Queen of England, who most often comes to mind when we talk about Queen, who by birth enjoys such royal title and privilege. Who do we crown as a queen? I mean, why queen for the Blessed Virgin Mary? And especially in the month of May, in the new liturgical calendar of 1969, the feast day of the Queenship of the Blessed Virgin Mary, which used to be on the 31st of May, was even removed, which is now replaced with the Feast of the Visitation on May 31st. Yet, the overpowering effect of Catholic tradition is such that the practice of May crowning still lingers, which is a good thing. And in the context of thoughts which we've been sharing on First Fridays, where we have been reflecting on portions of the classic Humility of Heart, I'm sorry, it shows in reverse, I just seek your attention upon the humble girl from Nazareth who is crowned Queen of heaven and earth. At the visitation, which is when Mary, after the Annunciation, visits Elizabeth, her cousin, we look at Mary as a humble servant. If it doesn't ring a bell, we'll see in a bit why. At the crowning, which we will do during May, we see her as Mary, who is the Queen of Heaven. We see her as not as a humble servant, but as a queen. I mean, just opposite of a servant. In this reflection, we shall see both the service as well as the queenship of Mary as aspects of humility. We are often called to look upon Mary as meek and mild, weak and a gentle little teenager from Nazareth who was suddenly visited by an angel announcing that she will have this unplanned pregnancy, good news being that the child conceived would be the Son of God. This is a huge misconception. Mary's meekness and mildness proceed not merely from her physical or temperamental weakness, so to say, but it comes more importantly out of her humility, if you consider that. And far from thrusting an unplanned pregnancy upon her, God has prepared Mary since eternity, not an afterthought or not an impulse. God doesn't do things on impulse. God has set Mary apart, consecrated her, means set her apart for his purpose of bearing his son, Jesus, through her immaculate conception. In other words, she is conceived without original sin. So he has set Mary apart to be the mother of Jesus, his son, who will redeem the world, beginning with Mary, his mother. It was not a sudden thing. It was not an unplanned pregnancy. God very much planned it. Going back to visitation, when Mary visits Elizabeth and Elizabeth greets her, Mary breaks into song. We know that as the Magnificat. She says, "My soul doth magnify the Lord, and my spirit hath rejoiced in God my salvation, because he hath regarded the humility of his handmaid servant." Because he hath regarded the humility. It seems like Mary is pointing to her own humility. Let's see what that means. "For behold, from henceforth all generations shall call me blessed." So that's a song when she goes to meet Elizabeth, who is already pregnant 6 months with John the Baptist. So at this point, I want to take out, in fact, the second chapter in this book. The author of this book, who is Father Bergamo, he gives a practical examine, which means, and this book is on humility, he gives a practical examine, which means how can we examine our conscience to see where we are failing to be humble or failing in the virtue of humility, and rather falling into the sin of pride, which is the opposite of humility. So he gives a practical way to find out how much we can practice the virtue of humility. For Mary, humility was given to her at her conception because God set her apart, because there was no original sin in her. But unlike Our Lady, we mortals, she was a mortal too, but since we were born with original sin, we need the practical examine on how to weed away the sin of pride. It goes without saying that we need God's assistance to do that, to weed away pride and to practice humility. I read from Father Bergamo's Humility of Heart. On the one hand, you cannot practice humility without the special help of God. And on the other, God will work nothing in you without you. And that's why God sent Angel Gabriel to our Blessed Mother, asking her for her yes. So God will do nothing in you without you. That is, without the cooperation of your own will. So there we get a clue of our will aligning to God's will. We get a little clue of that. We'll get to it. Father Bergamo says, I will expound for your enlightenment a practical examine on Christian humility. So he gives 3 steps to do this. The first is that in making your examine once a day, mark those faults which you may have committed against humility. So you may need a pen and paper, but he says, mark those faults that you may have committed against humility. Every fault that you may have noted down. You must not examine yourself each time upon every fault that you may have noted down, but begin by choosing not more than 1 or 2 of the more flagrant ones which you are in the habit of committing. And then accustom yourself to amend these. And as you pass on, little by little, to the next instance of pride, until pride will gradually be eradicated and humility will spring up in your heart. So that is step 1. And the second step in the examine is, take these faults, which we have noted down, which form the subject of your examine, and accuse ourselves of them in our confessions, that is sacramental confessions, in order to make us still more ashamed before God of our pride. So go one step further, not just keep it in your journal, but take it into the confessional, confess it before God. That is the priest who sits there to listen to your confession as Christ himself. And the third is that you should often read this practical examine in order to reflect seriously upon yourself, so that you may not be among those who think they are humble and are not really so. Okay, so 3 steps over there. Going back to the reflection, we see in Mary's song, she says, my soul doth magnify the Lord. I want to go a little bit into what soul means. What does she mean by my soul? So St. Thomas Aquinas teaches us, so let's say Catechism teaches us that Mary, that the powers of the soul are intellect and will. Intellect and will. Intellect as in memory and understanding, and our will. And the intellect is ordered toward truth, and the will is ordered toward the good. So intellect is ordered toward truth, not truth according to you or me, but according to God. Truth according to God. And Jesus says, I am the truth. And same way, good, not according to you or me, but truth according to God. God is all good. So when Mary sings, He hath regarded the humility of His handmaid, she is not singing of her own humility, because that would be pride, right? No. But because of her utter humility, which comes from aligning her total intellect and will to God's plan, she is able to sing those words to magnify or glorify Him, and not in the least to glorify herself. She is already saved. Her soul is singing to God her salvation. She is already saved. She is dead to the things of the world. She's saved from this world. So she is dead to the things of this world. That song shows that Mary is, in a sense, militant. She is not the meek and gentle and weak and timid girl from Nazareth. Okay, that may be one vision of her, but she is militant. How? She's in a world where, in this Jewish society, which is awaiting the Messiah, but yet is going to reject the Messiah and put him to death. And she is going to bear this Messiah and give birth to him in this culture. And she's going to walk with this Messiah all through his life until the cross and beyond. And she's going to stand there until he rises again and ascends into heaven to be seated at the right hand of the Father. So we understand even at the visitation, she is already headed towards that queenship. So her servanthood is already tending towards queenship because she was set apart. So that's her militancy. And here is a further evidence that she is against the devil who wants his reign over the world and wants nothing to do with Mary. Why? Because in Genesis, if you remember, after the fall of Adam and Eve, God tells the serpent, I will put enmities between thee and the woman, and thy seed and her seed. She shall crush thy head, and thou shalt lie in wait for her heel. Who is her seed? That is, the new Eve is from the old Eve, who said no to God and yes to the serpent. And the new Eve says yes to God and bears the Son of God. And her seed, Jesus Christ, redeems the world by crushing the head of the serpent. Basically, it's Our Lady's yes that crushed the head of the serpent. That is outright war, Marian militancy. And because Mary has been saved, in other words, she is dead to the world, she has that self-dominion in this world, which means that all generations shall call me blessed, which means she has that beatific vision, which means God is always before her. She's always countenancing God, even in this world as she walks, that she treads this earth. And she has the strength to undergo all of those sufferings that she undergoes as Our Lady of Sorrows, to accompany Christ through that journey as a co-participant in the salvation, our salvation. She's not a damsel in distress. She's a warrior queen. Continuing the song of Mary, the Magnificat, as she sings, He hath shown the might of his arm. He hath scattered the proud in the conceit of their heart. He hath put down the mighty from their seat, and hath exalted the humble. He hath filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he hath sent empty away. And among the Jews, there were the hungry who were waiting for the Messiah. They received the Messiah. Who are they? Us Christians, the Israel, the new Israel. And the rich who are sitting on top of the news from all those prophets that the Messiah is going to come. They were rich in God's word. They had all the prophecies, but they were sent empty because they rejected the Messiah. Only the humble were victorious for trusting in God. So all of these lines are about the humble winning out and the proud being pulverized for all their ideas about truth, all their ideas about goodness, for not recognizing that Christ is the truth, Christ is the good, Christ is the life. The actual deeper meaning of Mary's words pertain to our salvation. If you meditate the Magnificat, it is in our daily living. If we are to seek recognition and glory and awards, accolades and honor, wealth and other worldly things, we are just like princes and princesses sitting on heaven itself. And we're just trying to take a good view at a pile of dollar store tinsel. What a tragedy that is. Our eyes are not fixed towards where we are headed, which is heaven. We are missing the point of the kingship of Christ and the queenship of Mary. First Fridays and all Fridays are to the honor of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. First Saturdays and all Saturdays are to the honor of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And if we don't get the relevance of these royal people, this Lord and this Lady in our lives, we are really missing the point. And if we don't give importance to the queenship of Our Lady, as we do this crowning in May, if we miss the point that she's given to us as a model, because she's been saved first. Why? Because she conformed her will, aligned her will to the Father's will. And therefore, she's that servant who is privileged to be the queen. Not this or that. She's a servant who suffers and is given the privilege to be the queen. Not only in heaven, but also on earth. And only where she is honored will the Christ the King be honored. So if you see that in the Catholic world, in dioceses, in parishes, in our homes, Christ the King is not honored, that is because people stopped recognizing Our Lady as the Queen. So why will her son be a king? So as we crown her, let us remember, especially since it's First Friday reflection, that it is all about the heavenly royalty when we talk about the First Friday and the First Saturday. So with that, I end this reflection and onto my usual reminders. Tomorrow is the First Friday of May. 2 Masses, all-day Eucharistic adoration, and confessions from noon to 4 p.m. at St. Patrick Church of Myrna. Please make use of it. And let us try by our devotion in keeping the 9 First Fridays requested by our Lord. Let us, by that devotion, move our pastors to have First Friday Mass in honor of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And we meet on May 4th, which is the first Saturday of May, for our First Saturday gathering. As usual, it's a Marian month potluck, and we are also going to be greeting our first Holy Communicant, Kevin Albin, and confirmation candidate Rolton Anthony Jin, and all the moms who will be there in the gathering. And there's a nice special Marian segment where our children will lead. It'll be good fun. But above all, we honor our Blessed Mother with May crowning and, of course, the Holy Rosary. And May 31st marks the 100-day countdown to the Feast of the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, which is her birthday, which is September 8th. And let us keep praying at least from that time on, for another year of successful celebration of our Lady of Good Health in our parish. And I think that's going to be celebrated on the Feast of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross this year. But the actual feast day is September 8th, and the 100-day countdown begins May 31st. Let's make it special with our prayers beginning all from now. And please read the email. It has a lot of information there. And let's stick together around our Blessed Mother. May 13th is Feast of Our Lady of Fatima. And Queen of Heaven rejoice. Alleluia. And God bless you, friends.